for one, as I was mentioning, my mom's drug addiction in the height of the new Jack 80s, right? So she had become addicted to crack cocaine. So that was something that kind of followed me through high school. But as I was graduating high school, just at the start of my senior year in high school, my mom was murdered.
Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode of So What Success Stories. And today I'm talking to my friend, Alana Hill with Two Hill Consulting Services. Alana is one of my NSA, National Speakers Association buddies that I met maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But because of the nature of the business and what we do, I think we connected pretty fast. And then I happened to be in Houston speaking in Houston, and we ended up going to lunch. And Alana, that was the most amazing lunch to me because I got to know you on such a deeper level. I already respected you as a woman and as a speaker and somebody in this industry, but getting to know you and your story made me just fall in love with you and could not wait to be able to do this interview so that I could share you with those who watch my stuff, because this is good and I know it's going to help a lot of people. So Alana Hill, CEO and founder of Two Hill Consulting Services, but tell us a little bit more about yourself, Alana.
Well, thank you, Summer. First of all, that was lunch plus. That was lunch plus love plus sisterhood. That was, I mean, like eating was the smallest part of that.
You are so right.
And a fabulous, fabulous day. And that is really what life is all about, right? I mean, yes, we have to eat to live, but it's who are we surrounding ourselves with? Who are we spending time with? That was a beautiful connection. And just reminds me of my story, even as we were talking. I'm here in Houston, Texas. I'm right outside of Houston now, but I've grown up in Houston, Texas. That girl from Greens Point, which is an area of Houston that, well, we had a mall, and I say had because they literally just demolished the mall a few weeks ago. And that was the area where I grew up, one of the areas where I grew up. I moved a lot as a child, and so that created its own set of struggles and challenges. And when I say a lot, like I was in 3 schools in the 4th grade. Um, so that constant moving, that constant how my name is, that constant trying to figure out where I am, how I fit in, and I moved around all over Houston, and then at one point we moved to Seattle. Talk about culture shock. Then back to Houston, and so I spent most of my, I guess, formative years or high school in the Greens Point area. So that's kind of where I refer to that area, and then from there, really just working my way out of a community that I didn't really want to, that I didn't see myself in for the rest of my life. On my way to school, we lived in apartments, and we'd walk past, apartments that we knew, oh, that's a crack house, oh, that one, that's what's going on in that one. And just as the neighborhood was deteriorating. But while I was still navigating high school, the really difficult part of it was that I was living with my dad, who was a single dad. Give it up for single dads. And my dad was a single dad, not by choice. My dad was a single dad because while I was in high school, my mom had succumbed to her cocaine addiction. That actually is what moved us back from Seattle to Houston. And
But before you go too far,
okay,
because girl, you shared a ton already. Tell us a little bit about like your family and where you went to school and stuff like that, and then we're gonna get into those questions and get all the good stuff.
okay. No, sometimes when I'm like, who are you? That becomes part of who are you, right? So
It absolutely is.
so growing up, I went to Aldine High School in the north side of Houston, and then I went to college at Texas A&M University. I majored in engineering. So I have an engineering degree. So I'm, that fun, outgoing nerd. I was always the one trying to get all the nerds together to go, help everybody. I have photo albums of taking my classmates to help us go build a bridge for the Girl Scouts or something like that. So I've always had a servant's heart and servant spirit, and loved math and science.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so you had started on this journey, part of who you are, and I love how you've used all that you are in doing what you do now. And so let's get into it. In this program, I have what I call the So What Success system. It is my belief that anyone can achieve success if they learn how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices. They can have so much success. And that is success no matter what happens in life. And Alana, ma'am, you are a solo success woman for sure. So talk about, you can continue what you were saying. Talk about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to where you are today.
Well, for one, as I was mentioning, my mom's drug addiction in the height of the New Jack 80s, right? So she had become addicted to crack cocaine. So that was something that kind of followed me through high school. But as I was graduating high school, just at the start of my senior year in high school, my mom was murdered. And so her story never really got to finish in terms of what I always felt would be, her being able to break free of the addiction and go on to be this wonderful, smart, because she inspired my intelligence. She inspired my look it upness. Like if I asked her a question, she'd say, look it up, not out of laziness, but out of teaching me to be resourceful. And so that stuck with me. And so I'm thankful that she did, because having lost her at 12 to her addiction, I would have really been lost. So I had to overcome not having my mom in the home, and not having my mom at an age where, I mean, girls had their moms. I mean, the friends that I had that were in a single parent household, it was a single mom. So that was a really big struggle. And at the same time, part of, I mean, being a teenager is complicated, and that even further complicates it. And so when you consider your self-worth and your identity, I was really in a dark place where I felt like my mom chose cocaine over me. She chose crack over me. And that was a really, really hard daily reality. Um, while I know that that's not the case, the more I've understood addiction, but that's what it felt like to 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-old me. And so when I made, when I had to overcome the obstacle of not really having finances to go to college, when I realized that, my path to a future was through education. Well, God love him. I love my dad. I'm a daddy's girl, but he didn't have the money to send me to college. Um, so I had to figure that out. I had to learn to earn. I had to uh, get one, two, three. I had multiple jobs, and multiple jobs at the mall that I was saying that got demolished. So I had some serious feelings when they demolished that mall. But I had to just overcome the finances. And then even when it comes to the family dynamic, the fact of the things that were happening, with my mom and the circumstances around her death. I mean, there were no resources. I never talked to anybody about trauma or grief, when it happened. So I threw what I had in my trunk and ran off to college, and hoped that it wouldn't follow me, but it did, right? Um, and so that led to a series of questionable choices and questionable boyfriends, and and then a questionable husband who so
Are we talking about the one that remains? What?
no, I'm not talking about my beloved.
Okay,
No, no, no. A questionable ex-husband. So let me be clear. Because I married my college sweetheart. But so there were, for me, the biggest thing was knowing my worth and knowing my value. And that was probably one of the biggest obstacles that I had to overcome to be able to lead a thriving, healthy life.
So that's a lot. That's major. And just knowing you and where you are today, it makes me emotional to think about what you went through, and of course going back to being that 12-year-old girl and not having a mom, and then not even considering the circumstances of why you didn't, but just the fact that you didn't,
Mhm.
and then add the circumstances. And you're a really strong woman, and I do think about the fact that, that you said you never got help, trauma or grief counseling. And there's so many people who are dealing with hurt and trauma, and aren't able to thrive and push through, put their stuff in the trunk and keep going, right? So it's just amazing that you've been able to push through. Talk a little bit about how you did push through, how you were able to, because to get to college, first of all, right? And then to get through college knowing that you had dealt with that, or were still dealing with that.
It's interesting. My going to college was I was running to something just as much as I was running from something. And that's kind of really the story of my life, running to while running from. And it's because I was running to education. I was running to the idea of being an engineer because I'd flip through the file cabinets. We didn't have Google. I flipped through the file cabinet to see what colleges were in the area, which ones may have had scholarships, what majors. I wasn't even sure what major. They were go, oh, you're good in math and science, and so I was pre-med actually for a little while. But so figuring out, carving out that career path was something that I had to do kind of in a bubble without, the support that we would like to see. And, all the while, my dad's focus was, working and putting food on the table. And so those were decisions that I made on my own. No one said, hey, you need to go to college. I got up, and then no one said, hey, how are you going to pay for this? I filled out the paperwork and said, hey, daddy, sign here, and made that happen. And then when I got to college with that really overstuffed trunk that I talked about, after my freshman year, I got my transcript, and they could have sent me, well, they weren't going to send me home. They sent me that letter that says, if you don't if you don't bring this up, you will be going home. And the thought of that, the mere thought of me having to go back to the mall, to go back to the life that I was running from while running to, was enough to shift
Straighten
my
you up, huh?
priorities. I had to straighten up. I had to straighten up and fly right, as my uncle would say. And in that straightening up, I just, I had to make some different, decisions on how I studied and things like that. And just really beginning to focus on my future, and being more of an adult instead of a pseudo adult.
So thinking about that, going to the second part of SOA's success system is eliminating excuses. You had gone through really the unimaginable, a whole lot. You easily could have not graduated from high school, not gone off to college, not run to your engineering career. You could have stayed stuck. What are some of the excuses you had to eliminate to get to where you are today?
Well, first I had to eliminate the excuse of not having any money because college is expensive and I was going away for college. So I had to eliminate that, and I had to be resourceful, again, fill out the paper forms back then, talk to my counselor, but I initiated those conversations. I also I had to eliminate the excuse of not having cheerleaders. It's one thing to watch a team go all the way to the championship and the cheerleaders are there the entire way. Well, my mentor spoke to me one day, and she just spoke this into my sphere. She says, Lainey, and that's what she would call me. She says, you did all of this without cheerleaders. And that was the first time that it really hit me. And I was looking at that in retrospect. Um, I didn't have the cheerleaders. I had some family members that were supportive at different stages, at different points. I'll never say that I had no support, but I certainly did not have the commensurate amount of support given the gravity of what I was dealing with. Like you said, no mom, and then the circumstances of no mom. So I had to eliminate the excuses of finances, eliminate the excuses of I can't, she didn't, so I can't. I certainly had to detach myself from um, I always I praise being my mother's daughter. Like I love being my mother's daughter. I stole her face before we even had that expression, stole her face. I loved looking like her. I loved sounding like her, but I had to decouple that I wasn't her. And so that her mistakes weren't going to be my mistakes. And so I had to really learn what not to do in some cases from her, and learn what to do in some cases. I really had to use my discernment about what lessons I took forward with me.
Yeah. I think you also had to eliminate the excuse of not knowing how, right? Because I clearly hear that in your story, and I feel it in mine too. I remember filling out the paperwork and taking it to my folks to sign it. It's like, look,
Mhm.
I figured it out.
Yeah,
I just need you to sign it because I'm not
your
18.
social security number, right?
And you had to figure it out. And I think that's just amazing that you did it, that you had the drive within you to love your mom still and recognize that you couldn't be her, and to go ahead and figure things out. The third part of SOA's success system is calculating choices. talk about some of the calculated choices. You've already talked about some, but you can go deeper and share, even if, past college, some of the calculated choices that you've made on your journey.
So starting with college, and I'll add some in later years. But when I got that letter with my transcript with that number 1.5, I made a conscious decision, a calculated choice to change how I was showing up at school. Also, as a result of that letter, because what I didn't mention is not only did I fill out paperwork to help, get there, but part of that was receiving an academic scholarship, and I was incredibly proud of that. But I lost that scholarship, and I had nobody to blame but myself, because that was part of the eliminating excuses. And while yes, I had hardships, and while yes, there were circumstances, I was the one that wasn't showing up for class like I was supposed to show up for class. I was the one that wasn't putting in the effort in studying like I should have. I was the one that didn't take seriously the transition from high school to college, because it's different. It's a different game. So I had to make some choices then. And because I lost my scholarship, I then had to make choices around how I was going to fund my education. I got a job. I actually went back to the mall, and I thought, oh, I can work here. I was there for like all of a couple of months, and I was like, nope, no. So I dusted off my resume, started talking, and I actually connected with a mentor, and landed my first corporate job as an intern. So I started interning my sophomore year in college. So that was another way that I helped pay for college. I worked while I was in school, while I was there in College Station, but I also began my corporate career. So I started my corporate career while I was finishing college for financial reasons. And what I found out is that was really helping accelerate my career path. By the time I graduated college, think of high school students that graduate with like a lot of AP classes and a lot of college credits. I graduated college with so much relevant work experience that next thing I knew, I was in the executive suite. So being able to make those choices that helped accelerate my career. And that's also what accelerated me out of corporate America. What accelerated me into corporate America accelerated me out of it. So I became a consultant after 11 years of working. And again, part of that being overlap, but then realizing that my future, my best choices were going to be outside of that organization. And that was particularly important for me too, because at that point, by the time I'd made that exit decision, I was then a mom of 4 boys. So when we talk about our choices and our priorities, they shifted dramatically in 2000. We talk about Y2K. The year 2000 for me was the year that I got a husband and 3 young boys, praise God. And then God is funny, and he added 1 more. So wanting to, and the reason why this is actually so impactful is because even the way I loved my family, or love still in the current tense, but during that season, I don't want to sound like I don't love them anymore.
I got you.
It's like, Mom, you don't love me. The reason I loved them the way that I did then was also driven by knowing what it's like to not have your mom. And but also, like I said, kind of trying to take the best of those lessons. So I wanted my kids to be resourceful. So it was look it up. I didn't hand things to them. They had to do plenty around the house. These are some young men that know how to wash dishes like nobody else knows how to wash dishes. They know how to vacuum like nobody else knows how to vacuum. So I wanted them to be equipped. And our mantra was always that we were raising husbands. And so that was something that also drove the choices that I made in how I established my career, and what career choices that I made for myself, and how I still served the world and served corporate America, but how I served my family first.
I love it. I love it. So before I ask the next question, talk a little bit about your book, because I bought your book and I read your book after talking to you and learning your story and you sharing a little bit about your story. Share the name of your book and share why you wrote the book, and talk about that a little bit.
So my book is What's Your Catalyst? The Power of Managed Change. And when I say my book, that's my 3rd book. And so that 3rd book is the book that I encourage people to go beyond their story. So I have two books prior to that were the sharing of my story and the sharing of my testimony. I'm a woman of very deep faith, and I really attribute my faith to helping me overcome so much of what I went through. Um, but so still being able to have something that's a resource for my corporate and my business clients, as well as the application of all of those lessons to so many areas of our life. That's how What's Your Catalyst was born. It's about your purpose, and it's about your passions, and it's about how we use those to help set priorities and to make those choices that you were talking about in your So What formula. So it's really a guide. It's part storytelling, but part guide as to how we live effective lives.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's because of the things that you've been through and why you're so strong. And I know that's why we connected immediately, because of the things that you've dealt with and you've overcome. And I think about that now. You know how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices. You are definitely a so what success woman, Alana. But what is your personal definition of success?
My personal definition of success really comes from the impact that I make to the world around me. I'm grateful I'm in a season where I can look and say that I've raised four amazing young men. I have a successful business. I have a healthy marriage. There are people all over the Houston area and in other parts of the world that can say, you know what, Alana impacted me. She said this to me, or she said this about me, and it meant this to me. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help people understand how they can lead change in their own lives, and how they can overcome obstacles and be resilient within their personal and their professional lives. So that was something that success to me is helping people do that.
I love it. So, last question. You've given a lot of advice, a lot of wisdom that you share, and a lot of heart that you shared throughout this entire interview. But what's one piece of advice you would leave someone watching this who wants to be successful, but maybe they've had some traumatic experiences in their life too, and they're maybe dealing with some obstacles even related to that? What's one piece of advice that you would give them so that they can press on and find success too?
Well, with the availability of it, I definitely encourage people to get therapy if if they feel that they need it. Well, not even if they feel that they need it, get therapy, because chances are you're going to find out in therapy what you need therapy for. And so that's one of the reasons some people kind of avoid it. But go to therapy, because there's a really high likelihood that there's something in your life that a therapist can help support you with. And even if you've not had to experience trauma in your life, or the type of trauma that I have. Let me be clear, the type of trauma that I have, because we've all been through something. So don't dismiss or diminish what you've been through, because it's not my story. But get support to help you with yours, and take a look at how fast you're moving. And if you feel like you're moving slower, that's probably why.
Yeah. I thank you so much, Elena. I think that's powerful. I think it's necessary, especially in our community, right? And I like that you changed it to if you think you need it. It's just like, no,
Mhm.
we all need it. We all need it. And I thank you for sharing your story. I thank you for being my friend and for being one of my role models and inspiration in this speaking business. I love you, girl.
I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.